Hi, I'm Jerry Tyke. I'm here talking with Josh Silver, President of Pulsed Energy Technologies, today to find out a little bit more about the technology that he's bringing with his machines and PEMF. How are you today, Josh?
Doing good, Jerry. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. Hi, Josh. Can you tell us how you first got involved with the technology of PEMF?
Yes, that's a great question, actually. Believe it or not, I might have a young face, but I'm sort of like the old man in the technology. I got involved with this technology a little over 15 years ago at the turn of the last century with a previous version that was brought over from Europe. If you will, we sort of refer to it as the Ford Model T. And I had just finished university and moved down to Los Angeles, and I found a company that needed help wiring their building for the internet. And last century, wiring our buildings for the internet isn't as easy as it was today, where we click in a couple routers and we're set to go. This is where you had to go into the walls. And started working for this gentleman that had brought over this very huge, loud, sort of bulky contraption from Europe that he was using on people that are all sorts of pain and injury. And what I saw him do was he was treating little old ladies who would walk in with a walker, and then the next day we'd have to call them to remind them to come and pick the walker back up, because the technology had worked so well. It was relieving pain. And from there it sort of caught my attention, because as someone who has some relatives that have had some debilitating injuries and needed those sort of apparatuses, you don't forget things like that unless you're not in pain. So that's how I first got involved, and it first caught my attention.
So what the machine was doing that this gentleman made, was that creating PEMF?
Correct. It was the very first form of modern high-powered PEMF therapy. It's an old archaic device. The way we sort of look at it now is when the first cell phones or mobile phones came out in the 80s, right? They were mobile, but not really. You had one that was attached to your head and it had a huge box that you'd carry with you, and now we all walk around with these little iPhones and things like that. The old version of the technology was the first of the commercial-grade, high-powered PEMF therapy. And simply put, this gentleman would sort of use this huge box and take a small applicator and put it on a spot where you had pain, and 10-15 minutes later, the pain on these people were gone. It was pretty eye-catching.
Great. I think that maybe we need to understand a little bit more about what actually PEMF is.
Sure. That's a great question, because 15 years ago, if you Googled PEMF, you'd find all sorts of abbreviations that didn't equal pulsed electromagnetic field, which it does now. Now, when you Google PEMF therapy, you get so many different stories, explanations, things that people really have a hard time deciphering what it is and what it does. So I'll sort of give you a simple scientific answer and an analogy to go with it. The simple science is that every single cell in our body has a little bit amount of voltage, a measurable amount of electricity, and we refer to that as the transmembrane potential. It's the electrical potential between the inner and the outer membrane of the cell. Whenever the body runs into illness or injury or disease, part of that can be traced back to the electrical activity in the cell. The actual voltage has been reduced. And what this technology does, what the high-powered PEMF does, is we use this circle or this ring, this loop applicator, and we pulse a very strong magnetic field, but very quick. And with each pulse, the waves of the magnetic field pass through the cell, and with each pulse it leaves a net energy gain. So each time you're using the machine for 10 minutes, within each pulse, the cells are restoring a little bit more and a little bit more of an electrical charge until they're full of energy. Now, the analogy we like to give is, we think of this sort of like that we recharge the batteries inside of you. It's a very big old battery recharger. And once the cells are full of energy from the machine, that's when it sort of accelerates and facilitates a lot of the different healing processes and things that you can sort of find out there about PEMF therapy. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. Thank you, Josh. Now, could you give us a little bit more about the history of your company and how it started after you met this gentleman with this machine?
Sure. So I was the first guy that worked with this gentleman that asked the question about Are you taking this technology to pro sports teams, racehorses, chiropractors, people in pain? At the time, this technology that they had brought over from Europe, they were really looking at it for medical doctor and hospital-based implementation and therapy. They didn't quite look at, hey, I wonder if the sports teams would be interested. So this gentleman said, sure, if the sports teams are interested, you can take it to them, Josh, give them a call. And I did a bunch of cold calling and ended up getting a hold of the San Francisco 49ers. And they agreed to do a weekend-long trial of the technology to see what it was all about. And I spent a weekend treating all of their players on the machine. And the next morning after their game, their superstar football player, a former NFL wide receiver by the name of Terrell Owens, or T.O., came into the athletic training room and said to the trainer, hey, where's that machine? My heel has never felt this good after a game. I got to use this again. I got to see it more. And they called us up and said that, hey, we really like what we see. Can we see the machine longer? And at the time, my boss put me on a plane and sent me up with the machine. I spent the last 8 weeks of the NFL season sort of doing what turned out to be a case study with the athletic trainers and the players, getting a whole taste of results. As you can imagine, as sort of a young American kid at that point, that was it for me. I knew sort of what I wanted to do the rest of my life was share this technology with others, especially in the sports world, chiropractic world, the people that were in pain, because I really felt that there was a place for it. And it opened a lot of doors for me, and we loved the technology. The results were great. The only prohibitive factors was the technology we were getting from Europe was very old and archaic. It was 70s style technology, so it would break down a lot. We'd have to deal with a lot of technical issues and repairs, and it was very costly. The device was $60,000 plus, and it weighed about 280 pounds. So at the end of the day, we sort of liked the taste of the soup, but we didn't like the way that they made the soup. So we figured, you know what, let's bring it over to the United States and let's make it smaller and more portable and more effective and stronger and more efficient and all those things we sort of do with technology. And we started that project in 2004, and about 6 months into the project, my mentor, the gentleman that brought me into the technology, he had a sudden heart attack and he passed away. And it was pretty upsetting and pretty tragic for myself and a lot of the people sort of involved and connected to the technology, because it was a life's work of this gentleman to sort of help heal the world or help the world as best as possible with this machine. And we didn't realize until he passed away that he had sort of imparted his wisdom onto us, and we sort of got the bug about helping people. So that's a real long way of saying that when he passed away, myself and my former business partner, who was an engineer, continued along the project and continued developing the prototype that we had already made. And for about a year and a half after this gentleman passed, we did a whole bunch of clinical testing, engineering, third-party electrical measurements, is sort of is what you can imagine goes into re-engineering a product and making it more efficient, and sent it out to a couple different clinics in order to utilize it and give us feedback. And March of 2007, we actually came to market and released the product, the very first product, the PER 2000 HD. So that is the Reader's Digest version, if you will, of how I went from a young guy who had no clue about this technology at the turn of the century to, by the time 2007 had come around, traveled the world, worked with a bunch of numerous pro sports teams, and found a way to make a better or more efficient version of the technology after my mentor passed.
So in 2007, is that when Pulsed Energy Technology was created?
We actually were created in 2006 and spent the first year only doing research with the technology. It's a good question. We didn't bring the product to market for the first year. We had, like I said, a whole year's worth of testing, but in 2007 is when the product became available. So we incorporated in 2006, but sold our first product in 2007, and 8+ years later, we're still going strong.
I see. Well, that gives us a little bit of knowledge, Josh, about PEMF and how your company started. And we look forward to talking to you again to find out a little bit more about where your company's gone.
Okay, that's great. Sounds good, Jerry. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Have a good day.